다들은 좀 배기 제비기 지다 지기 뭔도 제바이나 다들은 저 들은 바 시버사가다비게 체직 오다 시버사가도 고주고래 고주고래 저도 시버사가다비린들이야 네 시버사가다와세디 뒤신 마선에 상유점내인데 네 상기베 제바된비게 뒤신다 네 구된비게 뒤신 네 군양알레디베 뒤신 숨좀 자지 송거래 안디마제 안델이야 아니 지게 뒤뒤에 제바디한 디나를 기거래 제가 디네에서 디다오디 안디께서 주바이나 먼저 개와 주바네 개와 하바도 아니 편연 쳐요레스 나 김제로 직가르세나 데니기 뒤 캐버진 최고래 상기기 상기비 뒤시들이야 뒤기 전에 나는 주gel이야 안지 수볼 때 감당 가리네 상기엘이야 아니 어디 뒤시디 캐버진디 먼저 하고 마도 뒤시기 캐버진디 요러와 요래시고래 제가 뒤시기 전에 안델이야 개와지반에 개와 캐버진 요래스 디마세 당한 주시버사가 되었어요 다 상기 다 점블이야 지게 다와디나로야 제바종라 상계바리 네 구단바리 세트 삼당여도 상기에 점블이야 구단베 제바된바디야 당아서 심지어 탐절이야 안지게 고동아세야는 디규주비에게 제도 심지게 랑아들이야 투시 제왕게 도시는 구단베 제바된바리 지자 상기베 제바된여도 다 도시는 상기게 연대돼야 상기베 제바된데 상기에서야 상기 좀 내는데다 시베 제바종을야 아니 뭐 지바 바차다 지바 빵비 연대 토바래 최담중 원수는 또베 탈신베 기체 캠베 연대 토바래 제자다 구 캠베 연대나 안 빵베 연대 되는 구유 다구 주반나서 된제 현리아 최진베게 차상 뉴바 개발시 토바인자 되는 상기기 연대도 시 구송도 연대 전야도 다 연대 전베 토네 안 소소하나 되니게는 상기 되는 제바를 대자다 안주이나 되니게 상기 제바 나신지는 되니게 고발 톱나 셈베게다 뒤바 제시도 되니게 삼다제 도시는 안주게다 개월 두번자 네 시바사가 되베네들이야 디봉게로 가르치네야 편연체와 요래사지 어두 순고래 되네자다 저 되니게 전주들이 된마님시 제정하다 되 뒤신 개발전 인자다 아주 개화체와 사이기다 도시네 용거로와
Good evening. So tonight we will continue to look at Shantideva's Bodhisattva's way of life, continuing to look at the chapter on vigilance, presenting ethical restraint. And we're doing so tonight on the first day of the fourth Tibetan month, the month of Sagadawa. So this is a very auspicious month in that in this month we celebrate the Buddha's birth, his later enlightenment, and then his passing. So all three are commemorated in this month. And this month comes together with the opportunity to accumulate extensive virtue because it's presented that the same virtuous activity done during this period leads to the accumulation of vastly more merit than that same act done at another time. So that we are therefore continuing to hear teachings of the Buddha in this month is incredibly fortuitous. So what I encourage you to do tonight, even more so than usual, and certainly throughout this month, is to generate a virtuous motivation. And in particular, the way that's good to do it in this fourth Tibetan month is to recall, because this is the month where we celebrate the Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and passing, we recall the great qualities that Buddhas have. We think of both all the incredible qualities of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind, as well as the various enlightened activities that Buddhas can engage in. And not only these incredible qualities, but Buddhas have such qualities because every trace of fault has been completely eradicated. Hence, they are perfected beings. So calling to mind just the incredible benefits that Buddha Shakyamuni brought into the world through his presence and his direct teachings, and then through his enlightening activities thereafter, he was able to ensure or able to guide his students through enlightened activities and his previous teachings to keep the Dharma alive and vibrant in the world, continuing over these millennia to benefit countless beings and benefit in the most meaningful of ways, helping beings transform their minds and progress towards the attainment of their own of their own enlightenment. So therefore, use this then as inspiration to generate your own mind of bodhicitta, the determination to become a Buddha myself, so that I too can have such a lasting beneficial impact on all beings, guide them directly and indirectly to gain freedom from suffering. So generate such a motivation for our talk tonight, as well as keep it alive and vibrant within you throughout all your virtuous endeavors over this month.
Dina shida nanju nyumba inza kola rangwa meba ko chik dushin chigorwa. On dina shi nganzu semdi ta nanju nyumba na semdi pe chi namsa duasha kondro ngaja nyumba choso chocho. Denigi inza ta semdi denigi nyumba keba ina nyumba di wangi ane cetele ina raja niga ganga teya nama kiba sugores. Ane digi ane le sa le di wangi chebu ane nga kiawa chima nga son ane chi nyawada ida dundrola soba ngason le keche denegi dunga padu meba nyungo chagor chisa denegi za sembi sem de nangbo chinyumba na shindi ane sembi nga jugi gewegi jawalya sembi da denegi nyumo chosu pa da song chene sembi gidi na gewe yu mipa chile pa mine ane de nyamne chen jagores dushine jagores yachi on dus kisingi denegi da Ten Session Danger Simde Gawe Mipalia Daje Shawore Sage. She did a done shower to the Gidina, gave it Georgia some dango research, on Duchin some dango research. I'm going to kiss in Tineshua.
Last week, we spoke about how this mind that is only temporarily abiding in this body is a mind that we have really not much control over, in that the afflictions arise so easily with such little stimulation and can easily dominate our way of thinking, leading us to create harm for ourselves and others, harm that will ripen in suffering in this and lives to come. So therefore, we need to take control of this crazed mind that we saw last week was again likened to an elephant in terms of both its power and its destructive potential. We need to take control of this mind by binding it with mindfulness and vigilance to the mighty pillar of the Dharma. So the Dharma then represents a variety of virtuous minds. So this is what we need to bind our mind to. And we do so with mindfulness and vigilance, which serve as the function to ensure that as soon as an affliction may arise, we use mindfulness. Vigilance will notice that, and mindfulness then turns our mind back to the Dharma. And this is imperative, because in this way we can come to subdue, to tame our own crazed elephant of a mind and turn it into the minds of the Dharma.
Andi mazedane jerato nga semde da yu tingi yu ji la mi je da nga ke zechi de tingi ze gomba ngomyo de jesa bezu shin yu ji la mi ben dongba yin na da me ba de ne le zechi de mi ne gombe ka so semde namyan ge wong de ma shong ge ji ga ne pa ma cho wa ji yu de zechi do mi je an zhen xin xi ye yang ne yang do an semde 미바 제 니우데 파치 초고데 미도 섬데 심주 되게 제네 아니 안에야도 따지네 근데 샘데 아니 미바데를 제주데 내셔 공부를 해서 다시네 주장으로 다 되는 게다 제주도 미비 띵에서 공부하는 되는 시험을 해서 모두 신도를 두시마 그 생각도 되는 쉬로와.
Last week also presented that this is the very method by which one comes to first calm one's mind and then calm it sufficiently that it can bide undistractedly on any object one desires. So in other words, it's through relying on mindfulness and vigilance, keeping the mind undistracted, ensuring that the object is held vividly and not in a lax manner, that one is able to develop calm abiding. And one will continue in this process from the starting point of perhaps developing calm abiding in relation to a Buddha image to through similar process throughout all the various topics of the Dharma up to developing the wisdom that is abiding on reality, on emptiness. So therefore, our training right now in mindfulness and vigilance is indispensable for our later attainment of qualities such as calm abiding and the various realizations of the path.
Yeah. Adine za dinye le anzu kare shubare sena ta chisang anzu ki paso driwe ka le lunga lugi ane chik pa jawa le chupe kapso da luidi kaso mikti pa tarang bo matang matawa che dom gang pa dan dus chine pa chik do ores ane mikti pa da chu da ka je ya andus chine da yo ma des ine za da anzu ka pa do ina da chu hong na da mi pa so gang am ma chik tarang bo matawa dom gang da chen dus chine do ores ya sta ane a직 되게 갑리네야 안지 lui bene anzu ge le kangba de ji kiljon la sopada ane chani nyamja la soba odu sin lui namna chue dinen na ji du sin de ho namna chue dinen na ji de ho re sa ji kisin anzu de ne ge shu ro da da de ne za da de ma shu de da de oda de ne ge kang a che sona ga ji ho re sa ji de ya da na wa du si re sa sun go re.
We also spoke last week and the weeks before about also applying mindfulness and vigilance to our physical behavior, that we ensure that whether we are moving around or when we are still, as we looked at last week, to be aware of our body. So a couple of weeks ago, I spoke about when we're moving, to be aware of what we are looking at, whether we are to use mindfulness and vigilance to ensure that we are keeping control of ourselves, we aren't being drawn into various distractions. And last week we spoke about when we're sitting, so not in movement, but when we are sitting, to ensure that we are in a position that is amenable or suitable for meditation. So upright, upright, but comfortable. And then we also spoke about that the various obstacles that can arise, one of the key of which is that of distraction. Now we come to the 42nd verse. Due to being caught up in danger, a festival and so forth, if I'm unable to do this, I should do what seems best. Similarly, at those times of generosity, it is taught that ethics may be relaxed.
Chidang due di da due bi kabla da du shen so su do ji lu de ji ki jo da ni mi pa so ma ta ta ri mo ma ta dom ga sam de ne de ko gre se ji lap se du sna za di de ko gre so wa da da de ni za aha Chidang gar so ba re la na ga ju de bi kabla ne de kang bo de ji ki jo shin la yin cham nyam ja che an du shin de ko re mi pa ta ri mo da yo ma re so su ju de dom ga ma da yo ma re pa so jo de kabla ne 타는 거 가져갈 때 교말 밑돔가 단 조고래서지 이제 그 시디 쉬로와 되네 쉬도다 되네게 냠두스되고 그래 저대 되네 제고래 되네 되네 되고래서 손로와 다 손용도 제자한테 지단 제바 되네 안 직바요나 같이 그래서 제자한테 직바요나 되네 가브리엘야 파줄람갈로 밑돔가 단 저대 kabla 안 되는바 인지 얘네마 산니와 라소바당 안디니 출로 개발 라소바 안디니게 semjen 라소바 안디지 지바 라소발레나 가르치 오래 세다 데니 데니게 다 소수교 공격 두스네 그 도지 기로제 되제 두시 되나 안에 데니 아니 미네 산니와 라소바는 농수다 출로라 개발나 네 가르치 오래스 제가 되네나 제가 되네 집어 용도 가다 용도 갑라는 가르쳐 오래라나 제가 갈대 미뉴 찌들자스 되네게다 되네게 집어 냥아 요도 갑라 다 도스는 되네게 출로자 맨마 도다 산니들레도 갑라 되노 지금 리소소체 도스는 어다 산지 랍자를 라메가 산지게 랍자를 두스되고 고고레센 되베네 솔냐가 여러와 제가 되네자 안디바 제모 되네게 되고 말해서 진유자신 된마 마디오바지 파 미티 파서 다 탕르부 땅 단에 파 되고래서 되 조션 조고마도 되네 되고 말해서 제가 되네게 마디오베네야 되네게 냥아 유베갑라 아니 되네 마디오바이나야 안 되네 마디오베기냐바 용고 말해라다 제가 남윤 지단다 라멜 저기 되네 최시도 갈라 되네 냠는 저 되네 되고래서도 되네 파서도 미때네 딱겨 말에 되디갑 되네 되고래서 까나와나신 아주 제고로 와다 되네게 되니 소저 지기에서 라멜게 송주슈 되네 맞아봐나 소슬리아다 지게 디바사야 용고로 봐 되네자 되네게 지바 예비갑라 냥아다 되네 예비갑라 어디 맞아봐나 가요 말에서 지들 자선 소수게 가니스 대화이나 안 되니신 디그리에서 오다 제상 냐바용 말에서 오다 다들 지바 고르셔로다
So looking at the first two lines, but first the context. So the context is when you're sitting in meditation, either on a comfortable chair or cross-legged, and one's following the advice of the Buddha and is engaging in meditation on the teachings of the Buddha. So as we've heard in previous verses, we are encouraged to not allow our mind to be distracted through mindfulness and vigilance, and when it is distracted, to bring it back to that virtuous object of meditation, again to that mighty pillar of the Dharma. So this is what Shantideva is advising and is based on what the Buddha himself advised what one should do. And the practitioner is perhaps quite skilled at this and is also moves around their environment in a way that is also mindful and vigilant, taking care of their body, their speech, and their mind. But what happens when fear arises in the mind because of a perceived danger? Perhaps there's a feeling of shaking, like there could be an earthquake, or the light and smells are changing as if a bushfire is approaching, or as has happened recently, the sound of approaching floodwater could be heard. So through hearing such things, or feeling such things, fear arises in the mind. Here the committed practitioner may be faced with a dilemma. The committed practitioner, they trust in the Buddha, they trust in the Dharma, and now they are in this face of distraction. If they are thinking, well, I need to follow the advice of the Buddha, I want to achieve the goals of the Dharma, therefore I should stay undistracted in my meditation practice and just take these sounds or smells or change of color as nothing more than an appearance to mind, to see it as just a distraction. That would be a mistaken approach. We see here in the first line, due to being caught up in danger, so just that far. Then the second line, if I'm unable to do this, I should do what seems best. So if I'm unable to do this, refers to continue in my focused way in my meditation because of being in danger and fear arising in the mind. I should do what seems best. So use one's intelligence. And in this instance, stand up, look around, see what's happening, and make a good decision.
denege jiba de la ne chike jungwa shi chubi jiba denege chike chomgun kumala soba dan denege jiba chönchege jiba la soba de na so yungro da jiba da mara yungro ba denege jeza rani ge so la nyenga da denege ba na pa denege ma de na jigire sma de ba ji pa du sen taring bu da du strona jigire sa dimen bege da shen ya jivar shubene da shen pen chu ke wala soba de wa ji nyenga da ji so le ge nyenga de gang ga shubene 어당한 결 로봇이 주면 내가 검자고가 되네게 어다 mik파 다시 말아가 두스전에 되고 그래서지 어디네 되는 신 발로에다네 지금 말아 진짜 되네자 신기 집어서를 냥아다 되네 옆에 파수다다 되네게 안파 지금 뭐 도시 기준이 마디바지 파랑지 벌써 좀나 jigores, jigres, tesudushin, Tada Randa, Shen Niba, Nig, Rana, Shen Nigali, Jibata, Delege, and the Jubiki Chidu, Dele Tarvi Chidu, Manzuki Denegi, that Desan Dele, but Anchi, Doji Tuada, and the Mikti of a Pataring Matapa, Dunita Duva, and Mati Matumne, Jigres or that. Dele Nawa Yores or Nawa is ordered.
Danger can come from many instances, many causes, such as the four elements, or the natural causes, as well as from other people, from thieves and the like. So when fear arises within oneself, if one recognizes one may be in danger, we should do what seems best. We should certainly break our meditation, investigate, and then make a right decision. Maybe there is no danger, and then one sits down and continues. And if there is danger, then one should flee somewhere safe. And likewise, if your situation's fine, but for someone else, they are experiencing fear, they are in some danger, they need help and assistance, and they approach you. That is not the time to say, I'm sorry, I am meditating, sort yourself out. That is not appropriate. If someone else is experiencing fear or in danger, you rise from your cushion or seat and you help them. Again, you follow the edict here, I should do what seems best. And if someone is coming to you and they are in need, and if you have the capacity to help them, then you should do so.
Jidana Mun Dadi, the next two Matubine, the degree as soon as the negated, the negative and Javi Tone, and Delia and Jig. That in Ungurach, Gadina Javi Tone, Paso draw Yama, La, that in Yajik, the Nigishavala Sobajan, Puga, that in Ungurua, that is a dang me pataro, dang do send your recipe, and the name member chip, did I do student. Getting than Javi Gabla and then Yama draw la so what me part and La Walla so part young Dustin. Ya Puyala so one Yorwa or the Cheneda degree as soon as
The second example Shantideva gives is that of a festival. So this we can think of perhaps in the context of a religious festival or celebration. If there is it's an auspicious day, or for whatever reason, there is a religious festival, and one has the opportunity to go, then again, one should investigate, think for oneself, and make a decision. Do what seems best. And if one has the opportunity to go and partake and help and assist and perhaps make offerings and contribute in various ways, then that may well be the best thing to do. At other times, one may think, right now, I will refrain and continue in meditation. But one should not be fixed or closed-minded or maybe rigid. One shouldn't be rigid in one's approach, nor should one be overly relaxed. Overly relaxed. One should strive for a balance. And this is the meaning of one should do what seems best.
This one, Galde Minuna, Chidircha, said, Dine Kabla Chibata, Deme, Tenet, Choshoke, Saba, T Kabla, and the Denegi, Galde Minuna, Sidu, Jensu, Sosoche, Mik, Paduinlia, Dosine, that two yagi Denegi Mevana, and the court Karina, Tiche, Marakativa, and the Tichen, Tigri, Galde Minuna. Kasi Denegi, the Inji Minji Denegi, Jemo, Bene, Jivara, Chunjura, and the Junshira, young Mevana, got Lamsa, Joy, Maduna, Joy, Marisura, then a room Chunjura, that Lamsa, all how you do send pa, Joy, Maris, Chembora, Nung to Chembora, Shenada, Lusola, Nuegi, Yanga Chembu in the Joy, Mad, Genetic Mad, Denegi, Yanga Mena, and they Tara to steal as on the Calde Minuna, the Genegi, Denegi, and Che Matuvena, and it got.
And with a religious festival, if one is partaking as means to help others, or to be part of those who are perhaps making offerings and so forth, in this way contributing, then it can be good to go. But one needs to use one's intelligence and make the right decision. Look honestly at what your reasons are for either wanting to go or not wanting to go. For example, one may think, oh, the weather's not so pleasant, I'm not going to go. But it is actually quite beneficial to. But one hides behind the excuse of slightly unpleasant weather. On the other hand, if the weather is awful, and especially if one's health is a bit precarious, better not to go. So in this way, one does what seems best. So one needs to be honest with oneself, looking at doing what is best, so to create merit, to be of benefit to others, but also to continue in one's practice. So by doing what's best, you take a balanced approach, not being rigid or uptight in your attitude.
디더를 진비 뒤다도 추림 당념 자월 송시의 당아주 진비게 냠는 제바 제베 디뒤 가서다 추림 송야다 되게 뒤질이야 레양도 아니 디니데 아니 기회 추셔다 아니 지게 가자당 거바 치중 도스타체네 아니 진비 뒤소 추림디 송야디 아니 지게 된다 총하다 가자 총하를 지나 추림디 마송하제 아니 진비 냠는데 저거래 사실 송여와다.
The third and fourth line, similarly, at those times of generosity, it is taught that ethics may be relaxed. So what this is referring to is specific instances where one has the opportunity to practice generosity, and in order to do so, some minor a part of ethics, if that needs be relaxed, but it is minor in comparison to the benefits of the act of generosity, then one should do so.
나변에 디로치 한제 지게 심제이나다 미나다 안에 지게 샹다지기 호쇠기 치도 대세 당용도 안에 바지 심제네 심제네 미나디 마 드르도바이나 안스드니 바 드르바 통소바이나 안에 안젤리아 고쇠네 대가용 미디기 안지 레시는 안줄리아 되는 바미다 심제네 조선에서 기치바이나 다 조마송스는 준신에다 준시비 추림 조마송란다 그 통사당에 조 통마송란의 준샤교로 와다 제가 준시나 시마초 준시메 세비 추림송으로 와다 추림이고 다 되네 단 지금 조선람나 안 되는만 그 대샤당지 편이 심제네 미디 소소다요 소주에기다 냥아요로 와다 되네자 데 안디 소마교바이나 소교에디 진비냠 진버와 얘네 셰 아니까 소래 미직비 진바와 차거와 제자다 다 되네 고소 교고거를 다 디니디 가르 담고거라나 다 기회 추준을 가르람나 다 준디 셰바 대당 녀바치는 녀바 충분 차거를 다그 심전래 고 소교에지 콜리에 닝제 소교에게 제도 안다디 바 준셰바 셰샤바이나 안에 디고레스워다 디고레스 가르스네 그래서 곧 디니 기회주준 따바이나 준셰베 녀바티당 고 소교에게 파연이도 소교에게 파연 제거로 받아 소교 미직비 진비 냠네 지고는 고 소래 타와 지고를 진짜 디니 인자 아니 대가서 디니 조선에서 셰베네 디웨나 소수게 통해바나 어딘 마드로마소 통마소 디마 드로마소스네 두시네 랍샤나 통마송 조마송스네 두 준셰샤베나 아니 디고레스워다 디니게.
So these third and fourth lines need to be understood clearly. Similarly, at those times of generosity, it is taught that ethics may be relaxed. So why I say it needs to be understood clearly is if it's misunderstood, one may well act in unethical ways and end up accumulating far more non-virtue than the virtue from generosity. So it's really these two lines refer to specific instances. So to give a well-known illustration, if you're in a position where you see an animal or perhaps a person fleeing for their life, and they are chased by a hunter or someone who wants to harm them, and they ask you, did you see where the animal went, or did you see where this person I despise went? Then the honest, ethical approach would be to say where they went, but rather under the influence of compassion. If one rather does what is unethical and lies and sends this the hunter in the wrong direction, that is better. So this is actually an illustration of those times of generosity where one is practicing the generosity of giving fearlessness, where you are acting in a way to protect what matters most to beings, their very precious lives. So in order to prevent a great harm coming, you tell a lie. But that lie is nothing compared to the saving of a life. So this is the kind of specific instance that this guidance refers to. It is certainly not a general edict. But when one practices generosity, such as the generosity of fearlessness, and this will be motivated by caring for others, for both the perpetrator of harm as well as the potential victim, then it certainly makes sense to misdirect them, to tell a lie.
Reda denigi da Thomason de Junshi da diba chunjura yungurwa da chunju yungur de dinaye da diba de dang semjen so gyubigi jimbigi mijigbi jimbani samdawe na mijigbi jimbadi payen chewa de goba chewa ne odosine goba chewa karasan goba karasan semjen so gyugorwa so gyugore su goba semjen de so targorwa goba chewa de denigi sosugi da jimbigi semjen so gyubigi da 냠nen디 체바이나 다 데니게 소교 투바이나 디파연 체와 체고라 디자다 디니 엔자다 추tumye 냠nen 디 제마도 데니게 준루 충충 셰와네 가야마티게스 가서네 디 고바당한 판도디 벤진비기 디파연 체와레 사시송고레 지산 추림 당용수샤 자워 송세데 데니게 상기게 돌레 송요레스 월사.
This is an illustration, again, where one is encouraged to use your intelligence. And this very example I've given is one from the Vinaya, where the Buddha taught that one needs to live with pure ethics. But there are those rare instances when there is a far greater benefit, such as in this case, the generosity of fearlessness, where you are giving the gift of someone's life or their well-being at the expense of a far smaller harm of telling a lie. So again, it comes down to using your intelligence.
La lori mesibe do sedina lori mesibe shubiki lori meseba se chanji semba digi ya sangye shuyon du andine sangye gi andidere jimbi du su chudum ani dude dangyom se jawo se song yor se do na la song yor se diso song dangyom se jawo song se de jesan do na la 디더르 진비 뒤수세 지dim 진배 냠된 제베 디냐가수 추림 뒤에 당염서 자워송 자워스 제산 추림디 준주디 디니바 거바 쳐와다 된다 쳐와 진배 냠된 유유도 아니 추림디 냐갑되네게 도시하셔다 송마도는지 그래야지.
This comes from a discussion between the Buddha and a Bodhisattva, where the Buddha gave this as an illustration of when the practitioner's ethical restraint could be relaxed, when in fact it even ought to be relaxed. And the criteria is that a far greater good deed is being done, a far greater benefits will follow from, in this instance, practicing the generosity of fearlessness rather than as answering truthfully.
진비 냠는 제다 수련 냠는 제디에 지나다 저게 다장주 semba 남기 저게 냠는지 림바 마선다 파신 주변한테 당보 진비 냠는 조치고 장주 semba 소람바다 졸람 진비 냠는 조 안디니게 안 수련 냠는 안 조로 제다 도 최고로 디네 엔자다고 디니게 저게 람 냠니 림바 고림 따다로 주제고 엔자 당보다 어다 진비 냠는 제에게 깝들이야 어디 진바디 냠는 제도 수류 냠는디 제네디게 수류 냠는 제 진비 냠는 도스네 샤나 지금 말해서 그래 제가 디네 인자 니를 거 진비 냠는 제고야디 냠는 야고체 디네 냠는 야고체 한디네 수류 냠는 제고레스 뭐다 담보 디니기 진비 냠는 야고 마죠나 근데 수류 냠는 제대반 수류 냠는 야고 중도 말해 용 말해서 제가 진비 뒤다도 수류 냠소 추림 단념 샤워 송세야디 나나디리 데네시고 안디니 송야요 레체다 그소리 Jimba da Tsudimi Yamlen Nido Gorem Masona, Tango Jimbe Yamlen Che, Dene, the Yakuchan, Dene Sudim Yamlen Zor, Yamlen Zor Chewa Tisha Horage. Dene Zade, Jimbe Yamlen Jebe, Nerapso, and Tsudimi Yamlen de Jetu Omarwada, Shazadine, Tsudim Jimbe, Don Semba, Baby, Be some down the Gabla, soon Semba Gomia, some time, Don Semba, Yamlen Jimba, Yamle Yakumbarwa. Dene Zada, Tinigi, Sonia Semba, sometime don't we sembe Yamlin Chibi Kabla, don't we semba, Sudim Sonia sometime, Jimbe Yamle Yakon 2 Mades, Tineza di Nerapso, Jimbi Yamle don't we semba Yamle Javi, Nerapso, Sudim Doiche, Sudim Sonia, some of the Tangi of Malpachana, Namasha Shajan degrees or.
So this account from the Vinaya is a conversation between the Buddha and a Bodhisattva. So this points to there being a specific context, which is the Bodhisattva receiving guidance on the practice of the 6 perfections. The 6 perfections are in a specific order of practice. Firstly, generosity. Second, ethical restraint, and so forth. So there is a specific order of practice where the former ones are a foundation upon which the latter ones come about. And it can be expressed also as the latter being higher or superior to the former. But this advice from the Buddha, what comes down to practitioners being encouraged or being made aware they should always be using their intelligence, their wisdom, and they should not be rigid or dogmatic. They should not have the attitude that I'm now a beginner bodhisattva, I need to strive in generosity. Thus far, that's fine. But if then they think, and therefore the other perfections can be put aside for later, and seeing them as separate, as unrelated, that then is an error. Because whilst generosity, being the first of the perfections, can be presented as being a basis for the practice of ethical restraint, it doesn't mean, whilst one is practicing generosity, that ethical restraint is left for later times. Because if one is not ethical whilst practicing generosity, it will not be possible to develop ethical restraint later because of the non-virtue accumulated. So generosity accumulates extensive virtue, and when done ethically, then it will serve as a basis for the later successful development of ethical restraint. But one should not think that these are done with no interaction between them, or that others can be the higher ones, the latter ones, can be completely ignored for the future. So the bodhisattva, the practitioner, should practice generosity, and if that's their focus for now, they should still be doing it within the restraints of what is ethical.
Dene tonglam topje sa dangbe nega so da dene jimbe nyamlen mason da jimbe nyamlen de yabu chasa dene enza de tsurim dene gi sa dangbe nega so da tsurim nyamlen zo chi geres zo tsurim ya jimbe nyamlen chi gore sheba da zunri de nyamlen chi gore de na zo ro sma da de tsurim nyamlen chi gore sa odu sin ho so nyamlen gi rimba zo dus na ya ju sa ro ko rimbal masona.
And of the 6 perfections, the primary focus of the bodhisattva on the 2 ordinary paths, the paths of accumulation and preparation, is that of generosity. It's only from the path of seeing, from the first ground, that ethical restraint becomes primary. That being said, it's whilst first generosity, later ethical restraint are primary, they are not practiced in isolation or at the expense of the others.
Adene ya ganshi samde jal zamba dele shendo misamde dedar tang wa yi sam dedar derdawayi sambayi deni reshi trubachas derdangwase derde base kaje de base delengi de tangse do de derde base ite base odir.
Moving then to the 43rd verse. Having considered and then begun to do something specific, do not think of anything else. Through the mind focusing upon that, set about accomplishing that alone for now.
Jawa Ganshi samde charzamba sidunga jugida Jawa gorim ngeje do di tangbo dije niba dije sek nyamlen chebe kabla nyamlen cheda go gorim ngejen jorwa tangbo dije or niba dije or seji on dosu de tangbo 심주 하고 제 하고 제제 ane jodo chine Jawa ngeje tangbo 공고에디 다다디 공기인 셈비게다 당보 디 공고 니바 디 공을 세치게 냠는 제기 림바 예전에 하고 와지 하고네 되네 아니 당보디 디체 때디 냠는 제기 셈비게 삼로파 삼기 바 삼제 타주제 안델이야 냠는 자와 배수 냠는 리 자와 고좀 거래야 제래 냠는 사지 가시 삼제 자삼 바세 지금 당보 지긴다. 당보 가르스네 자위 냠는데 고림 nga시데 당보 디지 니버 디지스 고림 녜바전도 냠는 제고 쇼르와 니하고와체 디네 당보 디 냠는 지긴 세비 삼노다데 두신 냠는 삼노다 냠는 자야 고좀바 좀고래서 송고로다 간시 삼대 자삼바세.
Having received teachings on a particular topic, one will then have a good understanding of the topic, and this will be your spiritual advice. This is what you should be meditating on. So now that is the specific topic that you are going to cultivate in meditation. Moreover, you will, in your teachings, it would have been presented how to meditate on the topic, starting here. And when you cultivate this well, you progress to this part, and then you progress to that part. So the various stages of training in a particular topic will have been clearly presented. So this needs to be understood well through one's teachings, and then one needs to train in that particular sequence. So one mustn't, so there are a few points here, one needs to gather information, but not leave it at that. One needs to then begin. But don't begin anywhere. Begin at the starting point of that for that training, and then continue in that sequence, not jumping around.
Di rang che mado dele shen anda jamba che di che ho sembe samda gyo ma re sur dele shen do misam desa.
This is made clear. The second line, do not think of anything else. This is referring to you're training on this topic. That is what you focus on, and moreover, you focus on the particular point of the training that you're in. If it has several steps, you focus on the step that you are on. Do not move around in a manner that resembles distraction.
Deni reshi trubacha sidi chesada kang druyagi nyamne di chigi sembe samlo deshi mipa teleya te taharang de mipa teshe yi samlo de tere mipa teshe taharang druko reshi deni reshi trubacha sin dadi di negap tela anti dira nyamne chego reshi.
Third and fourth line. Through the mind focusing upon that, set about accomplishing that alone for now. This is quite clear. What you've been advised in the first two lines is train in that one topic and that one subsection of it. And then in the second part of the verse, you focus on that section until it is accomplished. And then in this way, one does not bounce around in one's training, but one stays focused, attentive.
다 전시 선바디게 냠는 나도 뭐 진비게 냠는 다 발전 중에 나는 냠는 조 당보 가능한 거에 바디 하고 같이 당보 진비 냠는 조어 냠는 난거 디젤에 추중 냠는 난거 바디 도스네 캠바 제노 고름 내바전 되니게 냠는 난거 조어디 하고요도 안 제사다 삼로 오다 당보 수dum이 가서 진비 냠는 조어 냠는 지기인세 비게 삼로 됐다제네 된 다가라 삼로 됐다네 삼로 다가라 진비 냠는 대라 따지 될 이대신 진비 냠는 자활 배수 제고래 진비 냠는 동에선바 어두 자들 배수 제고래마 디 내갑 대니 레식 주바자지 디 내갑들라 대니스 진비 냠는 랑 조어랑 디랑 냠는 진에 주바 제고래스
So, for example, amongst the 6 perfections, one knows I need to start with generosity. Later, I'll move with my focus will be on ethical restraint. And as has been said in the previous verse, one recognizes these two aren't done in a way that they are disassociated or have no impact on the other, but the focus is on generosity. So for now, I will focus on generosity alone. So this then is very clear to the practitioner. I'm meditating and engaging in generosity as my primary focus, and that alone for now.
아니 니지곰 데네 사삼남다곰 데네 장슈셈곰보데 림바디 코게바르와 지제 데네 고림 게바레 지선 당보 니지야고 곰마도나 라삼남다데 야볼리고 마 라삼남다데 야볼리 마도나 아니 장슈셈디 냠네 야볼리고 마 고림 게바레 데네 연자다 장슈셈 냠네 제발라 고림 당보 가르치고 그랬으데 데네 게다 만주기 데 균제맹아 dwi제데 마치게 마시 진짜라서 소야 줄와다 디네요 디나신다 만주다데 니제를 삼담바이나 당보 니제디 냠는제 니제야 고지기 야고 계산나 데네는 하산한다 셈제 담죠 고유 동화의 드레싱의 상에서 고긴 세비기다 동화 담지세와의 내지인 사삼기야 데네 장주셈 냠네 데네 셈제 담지도 사유고 도버쇼 세비게 장주셈 냠네 제대 차고로와 데네자 고름 내바로와 데네 자다 데네게 고름 내바다 하고네 데네 셈제 담지 동화의 자와 쇼세비게 니제디 공공인스 공기인스 비게 셈게 파타제 디고미야 고주요도 데네 거 덴미지 닝지 미바 데르다와이 삼바이실 데니리슈 주바샤스데 제단 미바 닝제 랑랑 삼다제 안두시네 곰제 레시 디냐갑들야 디야보 마차바도 디랑 공고고레에서 올다
Many of the teachings you've heard, you would have heard about a specific sequence of trainings. So this is the sequence in which to train. So if someone has the determination to become a bodhisattva, it's excellent training, determination to have, but one needs to train in a specific sequence. So just to talk about the last few steps, one generates love and compassion, thereafter wholehearted resolve, and only then actual bodhicitta will come about. If one does not train in that sequence, one will not give rise to bodhicitta. So the focus then is on developing compassion. So one will meditate on the thought, may all beings abide free of suffering. And you meditate in various ways on compassion. So you use many different points of analysis, although focused on generating compassion. And you do so repeatedly over a sustained period, having the generation of compassion as your focus.
다디 바자야야 직가색 다디 가시 삼데 자잠바딜레 샨도 미셈데 데다 땅 데이 데데위 삼바이 디니 리슈투바샤 세데다 오늘 지나드 메테와나리아 디니기 다 진배냠는다 수림냠 마차네 다 전주심배냠는 집이 파전 중에 냠는 집에 가빈자 데니기 냠는 손배 가빈자 데리아 대시슈바는 진바 냠는다 수림냠는 조를 바자네 송도아 다 디나시다 디 아니 송을 데이나 디 식디 돈다 디가주 가와라 자나야 자유에 받을 대시슈바는 잠 이제 장주심 검나들이야 자유에 바자기도아.
So the specific intent of this verse is about the training of the Bodhisattva to train in the specific sequence of perfection, starting with generosity, followed by ethics, and so forth. But we should apply it more broadly. So, for example, one first needs to generate love and compassion in order to develop wholehearted resolve, and with those two well developed, then one will develop bodhicitta.
저기 퇴섬 곰섬으로 제비인데 당보지 다띵한 저기 냠는 치료 갑라다 퇴섬 곰섬디 해바로 싫어 당보 퇴바지네 되네 삼된데 삼되네 아니 당보 퇴 되네 퇴비 된데라 삼 되네 된다다 하고도 아니 공부에 차고로 와 제자 되네자 되네기 퇴바 제비 갑라 아니 지게 나 퇴바 과정아 미 지기 배추슈와 명한테 배지로시 슈디 갑라야 로정 지파시리 갈라다 공구 공개위에 선배세 데레 송여데 야고 만년제 곰되베네 되네 퇴바데 야볼리 투고 말 퇴바마는 된다데 야고 하고도 말되네 곰 야고 말와 제자 디디고 말 제자 퇴섬 곰숨디 당보 퇴바제 되네 삼바제 되네 곰고레스 제자 되네 인자 퇴비 갑라야 코 다가랑 퇴바제 하고 와제 된 퇴비 로정 제비 갑라 퇴바랑다 다가랑 삼다지 로디 퇴바들이 이대제 퇴비게 된 삼냠네 제고레스 제자다 되네 삼비 된다데 삼비 갑라 아직 된다 삼비게 마삼바제 아도 곰제고선 두션 삼다되네 된다 하고 두고 말와 제자 되네 인자다 삼바 제비 갑라야 디네게 곰니엘스 된다데 삼고를 삼다 하고로와 디인자 디니자 삼바들 파 된다데 제바제 삼다데 베 다가랑 삼다 로 파샹다 마다와제 다가랑 삼셴 삼마 다가랑 삼다제 제바제 삼르게 되게 퇴베 된들이야 디네게 삼다 제바제 오래서지 디네 엔지젤 디네 곰자오래서 숨고래.
Similarly, with the presentation of the three, hearing, reflecting, and meditating. These three are in a specific sequence, and you always hear them presented like this. You never hear reflecting, hearing, meditating, or meditating, hearing, reflecting. It's never presented in a different sequence. It's always hearing, reflecting, and meditating. This is a definite sequence, and this too is the sequence to train in. Just to say as an aside here, in this context, the term meditation refers to meditating, developing calm, abiding, meditative equipoise in upon what you've been reflecting and hearing. So this is the meaning of the term meditation in this context. Now to continue. So one is ready for actual meditation on the topic when one has heard and reflected sufficiently. If one is inspired from the teachings, but one hasn't heard enough, then and tries to engage in meditation, your meditation will not go well because you haven't gathered enough knowledge and you certainly haven't reflected on it. And this is because without an unmistaken knowledge, which comes about through hearing and the doubts being exposed and dispelled through reflection, without that, meditation will not come about effectively. And if one tries to meditate too soon, you'll see it goes nowhere. And then from this, frustration, disappointment may well come about. So this sequence of hearing, reflecting, and meditation, this is definite.
지금 퇴성 곰순나네 아니 그거 뉴베체에 가르스는 곰들와 육당 곰들와 제사당은 곰디 뉴베체에데 퇴데 제라 마트나디 곰제긴스네 데네 그 마트나 된다하고 마되나 하면은 곰투에 매로와 갈래하고 책으로와 디나신데 대지가 잠니제 삼다베나 다 닝지를 장수심도 개체어 연된체 파연체어 장수심이 군이라는 다 지켜와 제반은 산여고바 토고를 제사다 배계 침부를 장수심도 공부해서 닝지대 마고바제 제라 삼마다제 장수심 공부해서 장수심 삼다되나 장수심 죽투야요 말아와 어디래 디나신다 만도 진비 8신 주기 냠내지 더보조 진비 냠내 조어치고래 디니지 추tum냠내 제다 디니자 어디 진비냠내 추tum냠내데 누베체아디 야가 디니엘에 디지긴 삼배 삼다되는 추tum냠내 마제제 진비냠내 마제 추tum냠내 제대번 네 야고용 토야매리 가서 얘기디 고름 녀버려 당보디 야고지 마조나 아니 디르와 나치그 니바디 용 토야매로와 베네 아주게 주초보다 코마니도 주코마데 얘기를 와. 진짜 주초보 맞아가는 코마데 구구일라는 라이코요 말봐.
It's important to really take this to heart because it's all too easy that based on one's imprints, one is drawn to a particular topic and then one focuses on that. But without the preliminaries to that topic being properly cultivated, one will not gain the realization one hopes for. So if, for example, you want to drink hot water, you have to boil it. Without going through the preliminary of pouring the water into the kettle, turning the kettle on, waiting for it to boil, without those preliminaries, the hot water will not come about. So when one hears about hearing, reflecting, and meditating, one will also hear that meditation is so powerful. It is the most powerful. This is what leads to the radical transformation of our mind that we all desire. So one may strive to try and meditate on the topic, but without having gathered sufficient knowledge and eliminated all doubt, so your knowledge is completely stable and unmistaken, one will struggle in meditation because one will be experiencing obstacles in terms of one's understanding, not knowing if one is proceeding in the right manner or not, and so forth, and thereby one will not give rise to the desired goal. And this is the case throughout the various trainings. So, as I've mentioned, if one hears teachings of bodhicitta, once you meditate on bodhicitta, becoming a Buddha in order to lead all beings to the state of enlightenment, trying to develop those two aspects, but haven't done all those preliminaries, it's not going to come about. There's still some benefit in doing so, but one will not attain bodhicitta, one will not become a bodhisattva. And likewise, in the particular context of this verse, for those who are bodhisattvas, their focus needs to be on the correct sequence of the 6 perfections, to train in that specific order. And to do so requires a trust in the teachers and the teachings, and one to have some self-discipline, not just to follow one's preferences. Because if one does so, nothing will be achieved, or the full state that one desires will not be achieved.
군례제 셴나 니가 미규로 시진마인 녜녜녜몽 대단니니 펠미규르.
And this is further presented then in the 44th verse. If that approach is taken, all will turn out well. Otherwise, neither will come about. The secondary affliction of non-vigilance will not increase if this is done.
대단하네 군례제에서 내지 공도 쉬바디레 제산 대단하네서 제산 고림 뇌바진다 야보 하고와제 나 고림 뇌바진 당보대 야보 냠면제 되네 니바도 신 냠면 제바이나 대단하네 되네 냠면 제바네 되네 군례제에서 되네게다 고림 마주바 냠면데 야보 지고래 제대 야보 좀 자고래서 아니 디긴 제베게다 좀 대대 야보 튕거리에서 그러다.
The first line, if that approach is taken, this refers to what's just been presented. So if you meditate or if you practice in the way you are guided, you receive your teachings, you understand them well, and then you implement them, cultivate them in the way you are guided. If that approach is taken, all will turn out well. The desired goals, spiritual attainments, will be achieved.
Then 셴돈 니거를 미규로 시대 되네 맞제바체 아니 고림 뇌바친데 당보 제와 당보체 니바 두스 고림 뇌바친데 두스 맞제바 이나 안데 지기 당보대하고 맞제바지 니바디 파제 제대베네 되네 니가 영어요 말 셴도나 시는 고림 뇌바친데 고림지 머림바친 냠 맞제바 이나 안에 지게 당보 제와도 맞제 니바디 파삼다 되베네 되네 니가 용 말에 당보대야 야고 맞제바서 야 매르와 데 니바대 야고 용 말 니가 미그로스 제자다 베네 니제 다 전주심 고미에 당보 니제 야고 고미제 야고 맞좀바나 아니 마고 맞제 아니 니제 되 삼다 안셔라게 니버 툼바도 바제 전주 어디 전주심 공부해서 곰되베나 데네 아니 전주심 대야 기투 말에 니제 기투 니가 기투고 말에 니가 미그로스 디나심 퇴섬 검솔을 잡아있나 퇴바다 삼바다 야보 맞아봐지 어델리 니를 곰제다 야요 곰디 뉴버치에서 곰제되베나 되는 곰대 야보 맞죠 퇴섬 삼중다 퇴섬대 야보 맞죠 니가 용어 말해서 안디나시 대징아도 수rim도 진바수도 당보 조 수림 냠네 조 제어바데 맞아봐지 안디바데 딜레데 가소래 진변념을 조 제어바데 맞아봐 딜레 수림 냠네데 기체게서 뉴버 체어라 삼다 수림 삼다 되베나 진변념을 조 야보 맞지도 수림 냠네데 조 야보 지마 니가 용 말해서 제가 진변념네데 야보 맞죠 수림 냠네 야보 니가 중 말해서 제가다 현도나 지데 고름 해봐진데 고름 당보디 제어바데 야보지 니바도 맞아봐 이나 당보디 야보 맞아봐지 니바데 봐 베제라 제가 제베네 아니 니가 donda 주투 말해서 야고 용 말해서 현도는 이걸 미규로스.
The second line, otherwise neither will come about. So this, let's say a particular training has two steps, and one is drawn more to the second step than the first. So one skips the first and strives in the second. One will not achieve the second, because the foundation, the preliminary, hasn't been cultivated. So one doesn't achieve the second, and the first was neglected, so that too, it has not come about. So to stay in the context of the illustrations being given, if one doesn't train well in love and compassion, but just does a little bit, gets some feeling inside, and then goes to bodhicitta, one won't achieve bodhicitta. And one also has not achieved love and compassion. Likewise, with hearing, reflecting, and meditating, if one goes straight to meditation without having done sufficient hearing and reflecting, meditation on the topic will not come about well, and one will not have understood it well because the hearing and reflecting wasn't done. So therefore, nothing's achieved. And then lastly, too, if one is drawn to the practices of ethical restraint, but neglects the perfection of generosity, ethical restraint will not be properly developed, and then generosity being neglected, this too will not come about. So therefore, train in the way that you are guided. This is the correct and unmistaken manner, because the trainings or the teachings present the correct sequence to cultivate your mind in.
디 냠는 제어 니바티 제어 야고지 신체 하고와제 되는 야고 당보디 제어에 다가람 좀 다시 당보디 당보 배제 야고지 냠는 제 되는 니바들 고송 거를 해마도
Can you read it to me? I can't see it from here.
The secondary affliction of non-vigilance will not increase if this is done. These need to be the secondary affliction of non-vigilance will increase.
Okay, will not increase if this is done. Okay, that's what it says. So we'll get the will not increase. The secondary affliction of non-vigilance will not increase if this is done.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's correct. And we'll hear why say.
Oh, okay. Seems to be the reverse in the text I've got. But anyway.
안디네게다 냠는 집에 갈라 당보 제거받아 니바 제거도 우수 냠내기 심바디게 아보 고림게 바디게 당보디 제거받은 예바디 야보 하고 와체 안에 당보디 냠내 야보지 니바디네 니바디 고송고리 해서 어디 손와 디네 인자다 디 간제레 당보 제거 가래 니바 제거를 숨지파 심주치 시신 기파 당보 제거 니바 제거도 시신 하고지 하고데 심유 하고데 시신 세우로 시신 하고 그러와 시신 세대 셰럽기 차지게 제바제게 제바 제자다 당보 제바 가래 니바 가래 당보 디제고 니바 가래 제어디 당보 니바 디제고 숨고 디제고야 되다 시신 하고 그러와 제 디네 인자디 디하 먹어나 시신 마인녀 디디데 디가라 시신만이 뇨모 년년몽 데니 펠월 미규 데 대단한 펠미규세 지단 시신만인데 시신만인 바세야데 예외 뇨모 바리에세 시신만인 바세야데 다 시신이 독쇼디 시신만인 바시고래 다 시신 디가르세네 디디 베능아주 디예와 디제바치네 디단 디레스네 파 하고건 예와치네 하고건데라 시신식으로 단데 시신만인 발라비도 디나 먹어디 차고로다 시신 많이 봤을때다 근데 당보 가르쳐 이바 가르쳐 이제 한 먹어야지 다 시신 차로 와 되네게 한 먹어 뭐 되겠네 진짜 이 시신 많이 받을래 이 예외 뇨모 말해 생각도 뇨모 받나라 zan yun da ni yu nyo mo ba sa xie yu zai yu nyo mo ba ni yu nyo mo ba se de zan yun zhuk xia xie o due xia xie da gong zhuo nga ya ma ri ba zan yun zhuk da di na ni di de dang zhe wu yi ge de la ta ni wu yi ge nyo mo ba da ni xu ru xie yu ni yu nyo mo ba de za da xi xin ma yin ba se di ni yu nyo mo ba de se ni yun si re se ni yu nyo mo ba de se xi xin ma yi ni yun mo se.
So these first two lines, it's presented there that we need to train in the correct sequence that is presented. And moreover, the time for focusing on the second step of the training is when the first step has been achieved. And it's vigilance that knows both the sequence of training and also recognizes whether one is ready to move from the focus being from the one step to now the next step. And why it's said that vigilance is the mind that knows this is vigilance is a mind within the class of wisdom or intelligence. So it is a mind of wisdom or a mind of intelligence within that class. So therefore, what knows the various steps of training and recognizes whether one has fulfilled a particular step or not is the mind of vigilance. So there is in the, so now to come to the third line, the secondary affliction of non-vigilance. So amongst the presentation of mental factors, there are 6 which are afflictions, and then there are those which are a group that are close to those 6. These are the secondary afflictions, of which there are 20, and one of them is non-vigilance. So vigilance in our context here is a mind that knows correctly, so it knows what the sequence of training is. Then non-vigilance is a mind that doesn't know correctly, that is either unaware of the sequence or has a mistaken understanding. So this is then the meaning of the secondary affliction of non-vigilance, this incorrect understanding.
대시 시신기 제바체제 당보 냠는 제와 이번 냠는 지 당보지 야고 시신기 제바자 하고제 냠는 제도 되는 시신 많이 받이 아니 요모 받이 아니 용 말했을 때 대단한데 필미 교수네 니 아니야 말말 잘 말해서 다 그걸 시신기 제바체도 하고도 아니 시신 많이 받이 아니 대단한데 필미 교수도 야 아니 말말 차요 야 필주고 말해서 그래서 그디나 두신 시신이 제바제 나도 시신이 제바 맞으면 지게 맞아봐 제바 맞아 한직 노트쇼 야 노트쇼 마우쇼 쇼고로 와다 되는 거로 와 되네 매바 되네 요거 말해라 다시 시신이 두세 제바제 두시단 직디안 되네 지금 시신이 제바제 담배된 두스냠는 제어도 되네 거 시신 많이 받아 용용 누가 촌쇼로 그래서 그러다 필미 그래서 누가 촌쇼로 맞다 야말 가서 누가 쳐줘야 말했어.
If one utilizes vigilance, this mind that's within the class of wisdom, utilizes it well, then non-vigilance will not come about, will not increase. So now the fourth line. Non-vigilance will not increase if one is utilizing one's vigilance. And in fact, in the particular topic, non-vigilance, if it were there, it would dissipate, it would lose its strength or its influence due to the dominant presence of vigilance. So therefore, as vigilance itself grows and develops, then non-vigilance either will not arise, or what could be present will fade away.
당한지 량을 주기 나 냠는 집이 갑라 다 집에 냠는 집에 다 추전 냠는 집에 디닉 냠는 집이 갑라 아직 배직 셈려야 담부 심부세야 돼 뭐이니 수도 심주 약보 차 맞지 맞지 어디라래서 우주가요 말해서 그러다 가지래 다 집에 냠는 추전 냠는 니가 직 냠 제어도 진갑 진행하는 집에 냠는 제나 추전 냠는 쇼저게 수준 냠는 제 마투겐 다 수준 냠는 집에 냠는 제 마투겐 되는 게 돈베 내가 그래서 다 가르치고래라나 다 심주의 제제 가르치해도 가자 가르치해도 거바 가르치해도 니 판도 가르치 디삼당 그래서 디삼당 대징아 저게 베네 셈제 소주야기 미지글 두스제바이나 디가서다 소주 겹나 jimba ko mijibi jimba chawora ko so le gyobana jimba che da de solo gyobana zun shegor da de zun shebana dene zun shebi 추림 송위 추림 나가죠 거와 다 딩이 되기도 딩이다 직담가 제거로 다 니가 송토야 매로다 직담가 제도 다 가르쳐 오라는 아다가 추림 냠는 지기 추림 야고 송고에 섬제 진바들려 샤바나 데니 거바 가자 채와다 거바 채와디 팔 르고와 매바 채걸 이 경을 디채걸 제가 데네 스마타제 티바 심주제제 거바 가르치도 가자 가르치기도 두섬다데 섬다이디니 소교비아디 거바 채와 고 소쇼바인데 고 가자 채와 채걸 제가 데네 인자 소교비아디 개채와 채걸와 데네 인자 안디 내가블이야 추림디 바 가서 준신 추림디부도 대 총총되다 되는게 샤샤나 디그리에 숨마듬나 디그리에 사지 온도신의 심주신의 니체오를 해서지 숨거로 어디나 신다 되네신의 아직 냠는 집에 qab려야 아니지 고고름 해봐지는 냠는 가르가르 니엘 가르치고 숨이바가 숨 시진이 제바지야 심주야고 하고 와제 마도 안직 어디게 좀 빼야고래디 누베체에 삼제 직제되베나 당보 제거 니엘이 야고 마전데 누베체 전투베요 말했어 되네 인상 고름 해봐진 당보 시진게 당보 가르치고도 이바 가르쳐도 심주야고 제제 안 되나 하고 와제 하고 내되는 당보 제거에 파 셈게 타준 다랑 전에 내가 브린리아 디조냐면 제고래서 디제네 디 야고 차도 된 니바들 봐 냐면 주고래서 디마도 된 데네기 냐면 맞아제 당보도 언니바디 니바체라 어디 공그레스는 조디 야고 열었는데 제베네 당보도 냐면 야고 맞아는 니바디 야고 영어야 말되는 니가 더나 마루가 차로 그래서 진짜 니네 인자 고 냠는 제비 걸로 당보 가르쳐 니바가 된 시신이 받제바지 야고 하고 와제 데네 점바 된제 안도시는 냐면 림바시는 저거です디네 야고 연구를 디네 좀더 야고 통그래서지 송도와 데네 인자다 데네게 시신이 제바지도 제여도 디네 시신 많이 받아 용어 말해서 고 니바 충줄 대시 시신 많이 받 디네 제바지야 맞아 니야 맞아도 제바 맞아 제바네 시신 많이 받아 패줘제 아니 바 냠는 제야 아니 야기 좀마도 준 거래서 디네 인자다 시신도 제바제 디네 쟁기 쟁비 진제 안된도 시는 냠는 제여도 시신 많이 받아 아니 제 패기 말해서
So these three verses then, they are all within one sub-outline. So the general path that we're looking at in this chapter is the first of the three divisions of ethical restraint, the ethics of refraining from misdeeds. And the particular sub-outline these three verses are that we've looked at tonight is that within the section of purifying the actions of the three doors that we've been looking at since we started with this ethics of refraining from misdeeds on the 34th verse, this particular part is explaining the permitted and forbidden actions. So this comes down to how to use our vigilance skillfully. And bear in mind, vigilance is a mind in the class of wisdom or intelligence. So it's by using our wisdom or intelligence, or here referred to as vigilance, that we can determine that there are times when one's practice of generosity, for example, needs to be put ahead of one's ethics. Because generally, we know the edict that we need to be ethical at all times. We need to restrain ourselves from non-virtue. But by using our vigilance or our intelligence, there will be those occasions when we see, actually, in this instance, it's better that I do something else. Moreover, though, we need to ensure that we are well skilled at looking within and identifying our true motivations, so that if one sees here an opportunity to ignore ethics and rather do something else, that one doesn't open the door to our afflictions which so easily deceive us. Because we may well be able to justify what we've done, but the truth is, our afflictions were guiding us, not this mind of wisdom, that is the mind of vigilance. So in the illustration I gave earlier of the hunter chasing an animal or a violent person chasing another person, that kind of situation is where one practices the generosity of giving fearlessness ahead of ethics, because one lies and sends the hunter off in the wrong direction. Then moreover, continuing to look at vigilance, we saw the need to train in the correct sequence, to not just follow one's wishes, not just to follow what draws you, but to train in accordance with the teachings you receive. Therein, you will hear, first, these are your preliminaries. Preliminaries are developed in this way, and that will give rise to the goal. If in your inspiration to generate the goal, you skip the preliminaries, you will not achieve the goal. And in the end, not only have you not achieved the goal, but you haven't achieved the preliminaries either. So therefore, rely on vigilance. Utilize vigilance to follow the training as given. So when you know there's a set of steps to go through, with vigilance, again, this mind in the class of wisdom, train in that particular set, using your vigilance also to recognize when you are skilled enough to focus now on the next point in the training. And if you do so, this will prevent non-vigilance, this mind of not knowing, from arising or increasing. And what will prevent it from arising or increasing is the very strength of your mind of vigilance.
And in a Benedigo, Benedigo, Semje Roger Mango Sueg, Dondalia, Chanchar Yorada, Coronal Mimeva, and there Chanchadi Memdar Chicken Yo, which is the Coronal Mimerada, Tangangu Jeros, and Chimbaslon Levena. Cesar Denegi, Chimbalon do, and that whichever in the Chancha News, Semje Mango Sueg, Chatero. She's that the Semja Sujuna to go Marwa, the Surim Nakaru, Surim Suntuka, Sochi, Surim Sungomare, Surim Nakar. Mateva and the Colmata and the Cochimbala, Chimamatana, or the Jimbiniam Macheva de Kagorwa. The names are the nigger sometimes, the nigger 2 or the Duci Leo, Chisanda, Guava Carcedo, Gacha Carcedo, Chisanda, then sometimes, Chisan Colia, Jimba de Deb and the Payan to your Digi Jinja Simjam who is in the social Mawche, Chesa Sochi, never. Surim Georgia that gave never Chimusagua. The name that soldiers never did said in Yawachimanga, yes, I will. The names are Odelia, Dina and the Karchorson, Jimbad Martavache, and Surim Soy, George, Surim Chimatin, what did it? What did you charge over there?
To give a further illustration, if someone comes to you and asks for some money, and you have spare money and you want to give it to them, and they say, thank you, I appreciate the money, you have enough, so thank you for, please make this offering to me, I want to buy some weapons, or I'm a charity that's going to buy weapons for killing. So here you may think to yourself, well, I've read about these great bodhisattvas who, whenever they're asked, they give, and that they give everything without restraint. So maybe this is what I should do. I should also give. So this would be a mistake. Here, again, your vigilance, this mind of wisdom, you need to utilize. Here, ethics very clearly needs to dominate, and or needs to dominate generosity. And one declines, even though one has the means to give. One declines to give because the need or the cause is unethical. So therefore, this is an illustration where generosity is put aside and ethical restraint is rather taken as dominant. And then questions, as Venerable Steppel? Oh, no question? Okay. Then I'll take the opportunity just to answer what Cameron said. So sometimes there are mistakes in translations, very rarely, and it could be whatever text that translator was using had a typo in it. For example, the text Geshe and I are using in the previous verse, the 43rd verse, our text had a typo in it. The word just made no sense. But Geshe could work out what they meant to type, and then we could fix it. So that could have happened. The negative in that translation could have been wrong.
In this case, refers to the first part of the sentence.
So
in mine,
yeah.
It refers to the second part of the
Yeah.
sentence.
Yeah. So there may have been a misunderstanding from the translator, or it could have been a typo in the text he was using. Okay.
Thank you.
And thank you.